All right, so topic number 2 is going to be Clemson's Atlantic Division staying power. How long will Clemson stay on top of the Atlantic Division? This is one I kind of thought of earlier on in the week. I felt like, man, it would be nice to know, nice to kind of predict. And all we're doing is we're estimating, guesstimating on what we think. We can't really see the future, but we can do our best guess. And I wanted to get that projection to kind of realistically predict when they will fall from the top of the Atlantic Division. My dad said it best. He said, "Not while I'm alive." And I don't know if he knew what I was asking him, but I hope that that's true. I guess if you constantly win the Atlantic Division for the next 30 or 40 years, that would be, well, let me not say 30. Let me say 50 years at Dad.
Yeah,
let's say
keep
50
him alive
years.
as long as possible.
I would love to see 50 years of Dabo domination.
Absolutely.
The good thing is, though, it is hard to predict. And it's kind of nice to be in this situation where it's not easy to predict when Clemson could have the slightest sign of a crack. But what do you think? So what kind of research, what kind of thoughts do you have on it?
Well, my very first note, as far as, how long can Clemson stay on top of the Atlantic? My very first note says, until Dabo leaves. And what's crazy about that is, I don't even know that it's going to stop when Dabo leaves. Dabo has a plan. Dabo always has a plan, okay? When somebody leaves, they retire, they move on to a different job, they get a promotion, whatever it is, he's got a plan in place for that person. I feel quite sure he has a plan in place when he leaves. They've studied the culture. They know what he's all about. They know how he's built it, and I'm sure they'll be able to keep it there. Why would anybody think that Clemson is going anywhere as long as Dabo's here? You want to sit here and you want to be a realistic fan and think about just how long this type of unprecedented success could take place. And you don't want to say, well, they can do it, for the next 50 years. But at the same time, you look at it, the way we're recruiting right now is the elite of the elite. All right, we've got a good plan in place, great coaches that like to stay here. I mean, when can you honestly say that we're going to take a step back? I don't think you can right now. And that's a very good feeling to have as a Tiger fan. One thing I did when I was looking at this is I thought FSU was obviously, our biggest foe in the Atlantic and probably the ACC in general. They have been a powerhouse before. They could very well be a powerhouse again. As a matter of fact, I'm sure they're going to take some steps forward under Taggart. Will they get all the way back? I don't know. Florida State, very, very successful program in the past, very fertile recruiting ground. So they will be back. We're just not sure when they will be back. And something I'd like to get your take on it, not only yours, but the fans as well. Please leave us a comment down below what you think. But I wanted to take a look at, besides Florida State, who do you think could challenge Clemson and knock them off the throne in the Atlantic? I mean, is it NC State, Louisville, Wake Forest, Syracuse, Boston College? Who do you think it's going to be? Who do you think has the best chance to do so?
Well, it's so interesting. We don't share notes, but we're so much alike on how we think and how we write our notes and what we think is going to happen. To answer your question, I really don't think that there's another team that is realistically going to challenge Clemson in the Atlantic Division, unless there's something like a Lamar Jackson type player that comes along that can light up the scoreboard and can win the Heisman Trophy and just be the flashiest guy on YouTube college football searches. I just don't see it happening. Really, I like to lean heavy on guard play in basketball, and that's how I kind of thought of it in this case. So, I talk about NCAA, I say Clemson needs some good guards, better than what they had last year, some consistent guard play. Well, in football, they need a good quarterback and a good defensive line to be successful. That's my opinion. Clemson's obviously built a history, a legacy around the defensive line. They've had a great defensive line since 1970? I don't know, man. Not maybe a great defensive line, but they've always been able to consistently get good defensive linemen. Going back to William Perry, now all the way, Gaines Adams. You got Brinson Buckner's, Chester McLaughlin's. Now 3 drafted in the first round this year. So every decade there have been plenty of defensive linemen. There haven't always been stud quarterbacks until now, back to back, right? Until the late 2010s, 2015, 19s, 20s, right? So that's my thing is, can they keep up with the quarterback powerhouse? Can they keep up with the defensive line powerhouse? And I like the way Dabo did it because he started with something that he knew that he was good at, which they always say, start with your strengths, right? Don't worry about fixing your weaknesses. Start with your strengths. He started with the wide receivers and just knew that he could develop wide receivers, trusted his gut and his talent in being able to develop wide receivers and recruit them. And he did so. And then what happened? You started getting a ton of really good wide receivers. Then all of a sudden, hey, I'm a quarterback in Cartersville, Georgia, or in right outside of Athens, and I want to go, or Gainesville, right? And I want to go to Clemson. And then all of a sudden you get some star quarterbacks, and now we've got 3 star quarterbacks in a row, basically. Yeah. So to me, that's what I look at. They seem to have success with the defensive line consistently before even Dabo was there. So just the fact that Dabo is continuing it shows that that's kind of, I think that's more of a school legacy thing. That's just, you just had so many that were so good for so many years that I think even someone that's not Dabo might be able to get some good defensive linemen. But as far as the quarterbacks and stuff, that's something that you really haven't seen until you got Dabo into it. So if you look at it, well, you got Trevor Lawrence. How long's Trevor Lawrence staying here till? Well, we know he got him this year, right? We've got him in 2020, right?
Absolutely.
And then who do we got after him? Well, in 2020, DJ's going to be a freshman, going to be competing for that. We know DJ's the number 1 overall recruit, quarterback, a pocket passer just like Trevor. So 2021, DJ's sophomore year. 2022, DJ's junior year. So you really can't say, and those same years with DJ are the same years with that monster defensive line we just signed, or we not signed, that have committed, rather. Sure. Monster defensive line that's committed. So you look at it, and to me, I'm like, okay, well, in that case, I don't see any letting off the gas until really, or any cracks until at least 2023 season, which you know, I mean, that's like 3 seasons out. So that's crazy. I mean, more than 3 seasons out. So that's crazy amount of years, just back to back to back, top of the Atlantic. I look at Florida State. Well, Florida State, Willie Taggart, you know, they're a top 25 recruiting class, but they don't have, there's no Mario Edwards. There's no DeMarcus Christmas. There's no Jameis Winston on their recruiting board. And they're getting a bunch of 4-star guys. They're having a real hard time getting any 5-star guys, especially in those 2 key areas, which I say quarterback and defensive line. They last year they got a good amount of defensive linemen in their recruiting class, but this year they've got a quarterback that's I think Jeffrey Sims. I mean, he's another like way undersized guy. He's probably 150 pounds soaking wet. So I don't really see much out of their quarterback position or out of their defensive line. I don't see any big time stars. They don't have bad players. Don't get me wrong. They're getting top 25 recruiting classes, right. But compared to the team that they got to try to beat off the top, they don't have that quarterback. And my thing is, if you're not beating Clemson in 2019, 2020, 2021, then 2022, then people are like, well, Willie, are you really turning this around? It's 2022 now, and if they reset at head coach again after 2022, I think you could probably make an argument for Clemson basically going, I'm going to say at least, when's the first time they won the ACC? What year was that?
We need Tim Beret.
Yeah, we need Tim Beret for that. But let's just say we know it was 15. Was it 14? Let's say they won at 15. I mean, I could see them, if you're talking about we're already at 2023, let's say Florida State resets again, you're looking at 2027, you know, give them another time to rebuild and reload with a new coach.
Right.
To me, I mean, I know that's crazy to say because that's so far out, but I'm saying Dabo's already built quarterbacks and defensive lines. I'm thinking to get him 10 years.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. But see, here's the thing. You said you don't even see any chance of a crack until 2022, 2023, and all that kind of stuff. You're missing one very important thing. Dabo and company ain't going to stop recruiting between now and then, okay? They're still going to be trying to pull in all these 5-stars from everywhere across the country, receivers, quarterbacks, offensive, defensive linemen, okay? They're still going to be recruiting. That's why I can't honestly say right now I see this going anywhere ever until Dabo leaves. Okay. Again, I'm not saying that's a certainty. I don't want to sit here and act like Dabo is the greatest coach of all time, even though he very well may be by the time it's all said and done. But I can't sit here and tell you that it's going to stop anytime soon either.
So my final year prediction, if you want to tell me the exact year, I'm going with 2029. I'm going a good a nice decade of Dabo dominance.
2029. Well, I'm going to double you up and give you 20 years of Dabo dominance. Okay. I'd really like to, quadruple or quintuple you up, but I'm going to be conservative for today and just go for 20 years.
Let's just up the ante and do a millennium of Dabo dominance because of his head coaching succession plan that we know he has in place.
That's right.
Dabo dominance, then Jeff Scott dominance, then Jeff Scott Jr. dominance, then whoever, then maybe Taj Boyd comes back and dominates. Then maybe Chad Morris's son comes back.
Yeah.
And then Brent Venable or Jake Venables comes back. It's just going to be an amazing amount. Talk about a coaching tree that we're talking about in 2029 or 2039, as you're saying. What a coaching tree! Get out of here, Nick Saban, with your coaching tree.
Unfortunately, by 2039, we may not have football anymore. So yeah.
Oh wait, okay, all right. Now you're getting political here. Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to steer too deep into politics on this show for sure.
The 5-star recruits are all going to come from the transfer portal.
That's right. Exactly. That seems to be the direction we're heading.